you get to discuss kind of what the policy looks like, right? What kind of life insurance do you want to purchase? We get to tailor it to your actual needs. It's portable, right? So it doesn't matter where you go. It's not employment dependent. You get to keep it and you have more control over the policy. And so typically we like to see people have that in place on top of what they're getting from work.
Welcome to the Prospective Doctor Podcast, brought to you by Med School Coach. Pre-med and medical students alike are encouraged to tune in each week for tips on how to become a strong med school candidate, gain acceptance into the school of your dreams, and succeed on your journey toward residency and becoming a doctor.
Hello, everyone. We are back again with a special guest who you may be familiar with because not so long ago she was on our show, Dr. Stephanie Pearson. I'm just going to give her an opportunity to just give us a little recap of your story that you shared with us, because on our last episode, we talked about disability insurance. So if you haven't heard that, definitely go back and listen. But I want us to kind of meet Dr. Pearson again, hear about her story and why she's here today.
So hi, thanks for having me back. I love being part of your show and what you're doing, so thank you. So super quick story. I am an OBGYN by training and unfortunately was kicked in the shoulder during a difficult patient delivery. And she just got me in the right spot. And I ended up with a torn labrum that didn't heal. I developed a frozen shoulder, had surgery. My surgery didn't go as well as planned. And I have considerable range of motion deficits and nerve damage. And I have been out of clinical medicine almost 9.5 years. I was terminated the day that my FMLA was up because I didn't realize that my contract said that I needed to be able to do 100% of my job, which I had not been cleared to do OB or operate. So clearly I could not do all of my job. And I learned a lot the hard way about both disability and life insurance. And admittedly, my passion first was with disability insurance. And admittedly is still I am more passionate about disability insurance than I am about life insurance. And it's truly just because it's more nuanced and it's really an ever-changing modality and commodity. And so I definitely spend more of my time kind of in that arena. One of the things that I found out as I was speaking with physicians about disability insurance was that many of them didn't have life insurance. And my own story, I was grossly overfunded for life insurance and underfunded for disability insurance. So I had been taken advantage of on both fronts, right? Mm-hmm. And so the life insurance piece of our company was really born out of what I felt like was a necessity that, oh my gosh, here I am educating people about one type of insurance when life insurance is also really important when you have a family, when you have children, when you have, people relying on you. So that's why we decided that I would come back and talk about life insurance.
Thank you for being so transparent with that story. And as Dr. Stephanie mentioned, it's so important to think about disability insurance as you embark on your careers, because a lot of you guys will be going into quite high-paying fields, and a significant number of you guys will have loans to repay, families to take care of, homes, all of those things. So having disability insurance is so important. And now we're going to talk about life insurance. So a lot of students who are either transitioning into medical school, whether or not they're going straight through or took a few gap years or something else, and our current medical school students are pretty young and healthy. So they may be wondering, why do I need to worry about life insurance now?
So it really depends, right? And it's not the right thing for everyone. And I will be the first to tell somebody, you know what? let's talk about one. You really don't need the other. But if we're talking about who is the right person, right? So are you married? Do you have a spouse at home that is going to depend on your future income? Do you own a house, right? Do you have a mortgage? The bank does not care where they get their money from. They want their money back. So your estate is going to be responsible for that. If you have a child, right? How many medical students, residents now have decided not to put off family planning, right? God bless them all. I don't know how I could have done it. I waited until I became an attending, but I have so many friends and colleagues who did it during school and during training. That child, those children, right, that you're bringing into this world didn't ask. And if something happens to you, I am pretty confident that you have an idea of how you envision your children growing up. And so, there is a good percentage of people in that space that need it. Additionally, any woman that is thinking about getting pregnant should put some life insurance in place before her first pregnancy, because things like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, there are so many things that can happen in pregnancy that will increase the cost of life insurance. And so sometimes I say, you have to have a dependent. That's the one place where I'll say you don't necessarily have to have the dependent yet, but you're going to have a dependent.
I definitely agree with that because, at this point in time, we mentioned, most people are fairly healthy who are younger in medical school. Your conditions haven't happened yet, but there's that thing about pre-existing conditions, you have to get older to get them. So why not get it at a rate where you may have less conditions? And
Correct.
On top of that, we're talking about life insurance, and most of you guys are entering fields where life happens. Life is life, unfortunately or fortunately. So you've seen what's happening in the clinics and in the hospitals. Serious things can happen at any age. So it's great to be prepared.
Agreed. And especially with COVID and who knows what's coming next, right? I mean, it took a pandemic for me to actually be okay that I wasn't in clinical medicine anymore. But, we see what's happening all around us, and death, unfortunately, doesn't discriminate.
Yes. Well, the next question, and I think you kind of hit on this in the beginning, a lot of people may wonder, why should they buy a life insurance, or should they, outside of the ones that most people's jobs provide? Because a lot of times when you're transitioning into starting residency, they'll offer for you to have some money taken out of your check in order to have that. And then, of course, when you become an attending, that'll also be an option.
So there are a few reasons. So number one, any group life insurance, they're typically, and like everything in medicine, there are exceptions to every rule. So I'm talking what I see the most often. And I guess I should, for the sake of full transparency, I do not have a Series 7, 63, or 66, meaning I don't actually sell some of the life insurance policies that are tied to stocks and indexes and whatnot. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. I am just talking from years of education and experience, and we primarily focus on term insurance, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. With that being said, a lot of the employer policies have issues in you may not be able to take it with you. It may have rates that change if you do take it with you, meaning the premiums will go up, up, up. They can kind of change what they're providing if you leave. And additionally, they can change what they're providing because they are the entity that's offering these policies. Most often, it's kind of a spit in the bucket in that it's not really what you need, right? I look at it as gravy in that it tends to be a multiple of your income up to a certain amount. And most often that even cap is lower than what people really should have in place based on their income, their children, their mortgages. And so I tend to look at it as I mentioned, as gravy. And I typically will tell people, look, if your employer's offering it and it's not expensive now, take it, right? I mean, it tends to be fairly nominal. If in order to get more, you have to go through underwriting. So the piece that's kind of invasive and annoying, for lack of better phrasing, right? Blood, urine, medical records, all of that stuff tends not to be worth the trouble. I have found that a lot of those group life policies, they look for any reason, either not to give it to you or to make it more expensive. And so that's where having a private policy kind of adds in. You get to discuss kind of what the policy looks like, right? What kind of life insurance do you want to purchase? We get to tailor it to your actual needs. It's portable, right? So it doesn't matter where you go. It's not employment dependent. You get to keep it and you have more control over the policy. And so typically we like to see people have that in place on top of what they're getting from work.
Absolutely. So you gave us a hint that we would talk about it. A lot of people have questions as to whether or not they should purchase whole versus term life. And there are a lot of debates about that. So can you explain to us what the difference is? And I know it's different for everybody. Like, what would the perfect candidate for each be?
Okay. So I'm going to do this at like a 10,000 foot look because getting into each of them in super detail, we don't have enough time. And quite honestly, your viewers would want to like stick Q-tips in their ears. So if we take kind of a real high view, you have term and permanent. So permanent is actually an umbrella that encompasses whole life, universal, indexed, variable, and guaranteed. So it's actually a very wide net when we talk about permanent life insurance. I do think that most of the time people are thinking about pure whole versus term. So term, super easy to describe. It is a definitive death benefit that is good for a predetermined amount of time. So typically we talk in 10-year, 20-year, 30-year increments. And it's kind of like paying rent on your body in that it typically is use it or lose it. Okay. And there's an exception to that I'll get into in a second. In my humble opinion, that is all young people, for the most part, need. The time in our life where we're spending the most money is raising children, presumably getting them out of the house and educated. Once your children are out of the house, you really shouldn't need as much life insurance. And so with term, you can become kind of maximally covered at the least cost. Okay. Because term tends to be much less expensive than permanent. When we look at whole life is going to give you a definitive death benefit forever. So it is until you die, right? Now, a lot of insurance agents will claim that it's a good investment. I don't mix investments and insurance. There's way better return on investments outside of the life insurance space. But we're looking at a product that is good until you die. And for some people, that does make sense. And I tend to say that once your kids are out of the house, you may still want a death benefit. And so, as I mentioned, kind of one of the exceptions with the term, some better term policies will have something called a conversion option, so that sometime within the life of that policy, you can take a piece of the pie and turn it into a permanent product so that you've already kind of guaranteed your insurability, right? You get a policy while you're young and healthy, and the company has to give it to you at the same health class that you got the policy originally. Mm-hmm. Now, when we go into the differences between whole, universal, variable, index, all of that stuff, now you're getting into how is the cash value. So one of the big pros that people talk about with whole and permanent life insurance is that there tends to be cash value. So money that you can end up borrowing against, using for college, using for retirement, etc., right? It depends on what your premium looks like as to how that cash value develops. So some of those policies are tied to like the S&P 500. Some of them are tied in mutual funds. Some of them you're able to kind of play with the face amount and the premium, meaning, year over year, you can change what you put into that policy. But again, getting into the real nitty gritties, I don't think that we really have enough time. And again, I really do want to focus on what your listeners, in my opinion, again, should be focusing on.
I think that that's great. I think that the overview was wonderful, and it kind of shows the difference in why different people may have different needs. And that brings me to my next question, because of course we can't discuss this here because everyone is different. So you have your company, Pearson Ravitz, who can help people. And my question was, how can they figure out the right coverage for them? And I think that would come with having a consultation and reaching out.
Correct. Everybody's different. I mean, I can give you kind of the basics of term. And again, I guess I'll do this first. There's a very small segment where permanent life insurance makes sense younger. Super, super high earners, right? Our neurosurgeons in the group making, $1 million or more. People who come from a well-off family, and we're talking about estate planning, which is not most of us, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a time and a place for those products, and it really does come down to kind of an individual consultation. From the term life side, so there are really complicated calculators out there that look at everything from the average cost of a funeral in your area to potential assets, potential inheritances, 529s, right? The whole everything. I've always been a keep it simple, stupid person. And so I tend to speak in ranges. And over time, things that I've heard kind of over and over and over again are you should have 10 times your income in total coverage, or $1 million a child, and then roll in things like your mortgage and other debt that wouldn't die with you. And this is specifically for high earners. And by high earners, that's really everyone in medicine. So 6 figures and up. And so when we speak to people, right, we're looking at all of those things and what makes the most sense. And then that way we get to speak in ranges. And then it becomes sexy dinner conversation between partners, right? What do you really need if one half is no longer there, right? Would you need to get a nanny? Would you need to get a nanny and a half, right? If somebody's taking nights and you need help during the day and you need help at night, what are your plans? Do you plan on your kids being private school kids or public school kids? Do you anticipate them having expensive hobbies? How do you want them to spend their summers, right? Like there's stuff that is very unique to each couple, right? And so it's really a no one size fits all conversation. And I think it's really important to kind of go through that exercise and try to figure out, okay, really what would you need, you being the person who's left, right? I'm a big proponent of houses being paid off. I think that if a child loses a parent, they should not also lose the security of their childhood home. I lost a sister-in-law very young, and I just keep seeing my niece and nephew at that time. And if we had told them that they were losing their house, I don't even know how that would have gone over. So again, this is my humble opinion. I'm really, really passionate, or that may not even be the right word. I think it's really important that houses get paid off. And then we look at, okay, what else is there? And most federal student loans are actually forgiven upon death. However, if you had somebody co-sign on a private loan, we go back to the bank wants its money and they don't care where it's coming from. And so that has to be taken into account. And for some people, they know that if something happened to them while they were young, they also want to be able to take care of their parents. And so there's a lot of intergenerational wealth that needs to be taken into account. And so that's a question that I'll ask folks. And it's really split as far as who says, I want to be able to take care of my parents, or, you know what, I have a special needs sibling. I want to make sure that they're taken care of. And so there are, again, exceptions to every rule. And it really comes down to having a personalized model to work off of.
I totally agree. So you've shared so many pearls of wisdom about insurance for us over 2 episodes. So you're definitely my goal is to be Oprah. So you're like a friend of the show now. You're like a Gail.
I love it.
Come back and talk about more things.
I love it.
But my favorite question to ask all of my guests, you got a different question that I love to ask last time about advice for students. But this one is something that I think is important for all people in healthcare to think about, because we all know the U.S. healthcare system isn't perfect and we have a lot of opportunities for growth. So if you had a magic wand and you could change anything about the healthcare system, what would you change?
I would put physicians in the ivory tower. I have just seen too many healthcare systems destroyed by people that don't practice medicine and have no idea and seemingly no interest in seeing what the day-to-day lives of physicians and other healthcare providers looks like. And so I think that that's a good place to start, is to get us around the tables that are making these big decisions.
I think that would make a world of a difference, because how can you impact change and figure out how to make things flow better if you don't even know the day-to-day things or the intricacies or what the patients are even going through?
Exactly.
So I definitely appreciate you joining our show again. I just want to give you an opportunity to tell all of our listeners goodbye and where they can find information about you and Pearson Rabbit. Again,
I'm honored to be a Gail, and I'm happy to come back anytime you want. But folks can find me at pearsonrabbits.com, Stephanie at pearsonrabbits.com, 610-658-3251. I honestly think that I am more accessible now than I was when I was practicing. I am really my real name on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I don't know what my Instagram handle is. That's terrible. I think we're actually in the process of changing that so that I have a professional one. If you go on now, you'll see pictures of my kids. Mm-hmm. And that's about it.
Well, thank you. And there is no embarrassment about not knowing your Instagram handle. I think I have been a member since it opened in 2012 or something. And maybe about 2 years ago, I started actually taking Instagram seriously. So I used to always text my best friend, what's my name again?
Thank you for making me feel better, because I was going to say, I think I'm aging myself, that is not something that we've been really good about. And it's one of the things that in 2023 we want to get better at. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully you'll see more posts from us. Yes. And speaking of posts,
definitely. I do know my Instagram handle now. So if you guys have any requests for guests or topics, please reach out at DOCTOR, the letter D, Graham, Dr. D Graham, and let us know what you want. And also click that subscribe button. We now have these and only also where all of the podcasts are found, like Apple and all of that things. But now we're on YouTube. So you guys can go and check it out there too, and like and subscribe and share with your friends, because a lot of our episodes may be specialty dependent, but this is something that can resonate with all of us. So I think everyone that you know should listen to this episode. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward med school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune in again next time.